Hello, hello. How is everybody doing today? I see quite a few people on. Can you say hello so I know who is here? Let me see who is here. All right, let us jump right into it. So, as you know, we're going to be talking about recycling and waste management today. Very important topics. And I believe anybody that's here that showed up, you are interested to know what you can do and how you can actually make a difference in Jamaica in terms of what we're seeing around us daily. You know, it's not a pretty sight when we look on the roadside and we're seeing all of this trash, but as individuals, we all have a part to play. And this is why we're here today. All right. So thank you for joining us for the fifth episode of Conversations with ECCO. I am Shelly Ann Dunkley, resident ECCO lady, as they call me. And I do hope that the chats have been informative to you, as well as you've been able to learn and you're actually taking actions in what you're learning, in these chats. So again, welcome. For those that are new, welcome again. And it's a quarterly or fortnightly, sorry, it's a fortnightly chat that we host every Wednesday, every other Wednesday at 8. And we talk about topics, that our viewers have reached out to us and said that they want to hear about. So recycling was one of the biggest ones. Energy and water were obviously, larger and wanted, got more interest there. So we're talking about recycling and waste management today. It's an open space. Please feel free to share your thoughts, share your comments, and ask questions. That's why we're here. Our guests are here because they have information and we reached out to them and we want you to be informed. We want you to take the necessary steps in order to be green, be eco, and live an environmentally conscious life. Because without a healthy environment, guys, we won't be able to do the things that we so enjoy every single day. The sun that we see, the beaches. Oh my gosh, let's not even go there. We're surrounded by beautiful beaches, and it's something that we all need to take part in preserving and ensuring that they're kept clean. So again, we're going to talk about it, but also you need to also take action as an individual to make a difference. All right, open space. Let's talk. Let's talk about recycling. ECCO, for those that are new, ECCO stands for Environmentally Conscious Consumer Operations. And it's your source for everything eco, everything that's about environment in Jamaica and also in the global space. We talk about a lot of topics that are in the global space, climate change, global warming, etc. So we want you to feel comfortable and we want you to ask all the questions that you want answered. We need to understand our impact, how we as individuals and the collective as a population, global citizens, how we impact our nation and the world. All right, so we'll be doing quite a few giveaways today, so please stay posted. Tonight, like I said, we'll be talking about recycling and waste management with two gentlemen that know a little bit about these areas, just a little, actually quite a bit. That's why they're here. While these entities provide waste services to the population, we also need to participate and be part of the solution. Knowing and understanding the operations of these entities, we can help support as best as possible by sharing what we've learned. And again, each one teach one, it's not a new phrase. This is why we're here and we're going to be talking and we're going to action, what we learn. All right, so we want to hear from you. Post your comments and your questions in the comment section. You make sure you follow us live on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, etc. All right. All right, let us jump right into it. So our first guest, let me bring up this little graphic here. I'm sure a lot of people know this gentleman and a lot of people are probably here just to see him, but it's okay. We're going to be talking to him now, and let me invite Dr. Damian King into our chat. Hello.
Hi, Shelly, and it's
smiling.
so
I
good to
love
see
it.
you and so good to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy your company and I enjoy learning and listening to you. And, conversations with you are always, yes, quite exciting.
Well, we've
And your
always
Twitter.
worked well together, so it's
Yes.
fantastic. It's neutral.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So let's jump right into it, Damien. Tell me a little
Sure.
bit about yourself and the work that you do at RPJ as the chairman.
Well, I am the chairman of Recycling Partners of Jamaica. Recycling Partners of Jamaica is a charity that is set up to act in the public interest in relation to managing plastic bottle waste.
Okay.
And we have taken the responsibility as a company to try to get most of the plastic bottles out of the waste stream. I was asked to chair the company because my day job is with the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, and we have done a lot of work on recommendations to manage environmental issues and environmental problems. And one of our recommendations had to do specifically with plastic bottles and the management of it.
Okay.
And so Recycling Partners of Jamaica was established to see if we can implement some of these recommendations that Capri came up with.
Okay, beautiful. All right. So what is recycling? And we hear a lot about it. And in the Jamaican context, it's actually a little different than, what it is or the definition of recycling. So tell me a little bit about recycling in the Jamaican context.
Well, what we're trying to do, I mean, we have a huge problem with plastic bottle waste. What we are trying to do is to avoid the large quantity of plastic bottles that are produced ending up in the waste stream, ending up on the streets and on the beaches and in the bushes and at the dump.
How many are we looking at produced annually or put on the market annually? What's the number?
Approximately 800 million plastic bottles we go through in various drinks.
Yeah.
And that's just one kind of plastic bottle. That's just PET bottles. So, and what we know is that plastic takes literally hundreds of years to break down. What happens in the interim is that it breaks up into micro fine particles.
Yeah.
And then gets into the food chain.
Yes.
So the visible plastic that we see is only a part of the problem.
Yeah.
Another huge part of the problem is the plastic we don't see. It breaks up into microparticles, gets into the rivers, gets into the ocean, eaten by fish. We eat the fish, it gets into our bodies.
Yeah.
It also destroys wildlife because wildlife also eat the fish, also sometimes get it, eat the plastic itself.
Yeah.
And it causes, it's detrimental to wildlife as well. So quantitatively and globally, it's a huge problem because plastic does not disintegrate.
Yeah. So of the 800 million, that's quite a bit, and that's just PET.
Right.
And one of the things that I want our viewers to know is there are actually 7 categories or 7 different types of plastics. And if you follow ECCO and also if you follow Recycling JA, you will learn the different types of plastics. So PET is your typical water bottle, let's say like this.
There you go.
It's clear, you can squeeze it. But how you need to find that out, and that's something that we'll talk about in a second in terms of the different types of bottles or the different types of plastics. Plastics is everywhere, from your phone case, your laptop, everything a lot of things that we use, it's made from plastic. But for the most part of the 800 million, that's just PET. We're not even looking at HDPE in that number. That's wow. That's quite interesting. So when are we going to be, collectively getting that total together, in terms of a full number so we can, reach out to people and be like, guys, even 800 million is crazy though. We really need
Yeah,
to
well,
look
this
at
is the
that.
thing. I mean, and it's good to sort of have that number as the starting point of the conversation, because what it tells you is the scale of the problem that we're facing.
Yeah.
And what Recycling Partners is committed to doing is creating a national effort to collect the vast majority of those plastic bottles so it does not end up in the waste stream, does
Yeah.
not end up polluting our shores,
Yeah.
does not end up breaking up into particles in the ocean. We want to collect it back.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's
I
so recycling in the Jamaican context is less focused at this stage anyway
mhm.
on reusing that plastic itself in ways that we need it.
Okay.
The task at the moment is to create a national effort to collect back nearly all of those bottles and at least make it available
Yeah.
for reuse.
Yeah. And remanufacture into some other product, because
Right.
the plastic can be used to make so many different things. You know, you
Oh,
can make shirts, you can make furniture.
to
I've
make
seen where
roof
they
tiles,
actually
to make asphalt. I mean,
exactly.
it can be used. It can be used to make new PET
Yeah.
bottles for drinks.
Yeah. So it's something that we definitely need to, get the information out in terms of bring the bottles in, guys. Get it off of the shores, get it off of the gullies. Oh my gosh, let's not even go in the gullies, because with the rain today, I was just at a
Right.
loss.
Well, that's the
All
issue,
right.
because the environmental damage is not just that we see the plastic all over the place and it looks ugly and dirty. It
Yeah.
also blocks up the drains and
Yeah.
causes a lot of the flooding that we see.
Yeah. Yeah. It
And
does.
we don't have any history in Jamaica of recycling to any extent.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really starting up a national effort.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So in terms of the types of bottles that RPJ collects, so we know PET is one, which is typically your beverage bottles. And one of the things that I'd like for our guests to know is where to find the code to distinguish, the different types of plastics. So you collect PET as well as
And we also collect HDPE,
okay.
high density polyethylene. We actually
Mm-hmm.
collect all kinds of plastic bottles,
Okay.
but we are going to be focused on recycling
Mm-hmm.
only the PET and the HDPE.
Okay. All right.
But
I
we collect all
actually
kinds of plastic bottles.
Okay. Apologies, guys. I thought I had a HDPE bottle to show you, but we do have the codes that we can share with you. I will bring that up on the screen. So what you need to do is look for that triangle, and then if it has the number 1 or the number 2 in there, you'd see the letters at the bottom, PETE or PET, and the HDPE. So we'll share this after, so everybody can have a look at that. All right, so those are the types of plastic. So you collect everything, and please remember that your number 1 or number 2, it could be cooking oil, it could be your lotion bottles. Just look for the
Detergent
code and you
bottles.
exactly. Yeah. So look for the code. All right. So RPJ, where do the plastics go after they're collected? Because just like you said, we actually don't reuse it or make it into something else. So where does it go?
Well, there are private companies that are part of the recycling chain.
Yeah.
So we make sure it's delivered to those companies that are going to clean the plastic and then chop it into flakes.
Mm-hmm.
And the flakes are what really can be used to create other products. So private companies take over and make money on the recycling.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, we've seen it in, let's say, I believe it's Nike, and there are a few other clothing companies or sneaker companies that actually use it in their shoes. So that's
Right.
something that we need to look at. So one of the things I want for our eco viewers to be encouraged about is the fact that as a conscious consumer, we want to support the companies that are creating these products,
Indeed.
as well as supporting the supply chain. So RPJ is collecting, and they're actually going to make sure that it reaches, a supplier or somebody that needs this type of material in order to now make something else from it, so it doesn't end up in our
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
we talk about good corporate citizenship, which is companies that are trying to behave in ways that are consistent with the public interest.
Yeah.
And there's good personal citizenship as well. Whereas consumers, we have that part to play
Yes.
to reward the companies that are aligned with the kind of society that we want to live in.
Did you read my mission statement?
I did not read your mission statement.
That's exactly what we're trying to
Did I
promote.
name it?
Conscious consumers. That's really what it is.
There you
All right.
go.
So, how is RPJ funded? Tell me a little bit about that.
In an exercise of good corporate citizenship, the manufacturers of plastic, the manufacturers of soft drinks, and the drinks that use PET bottles came together and decided that they wanted to fund the effort to try to take control of this problem. And so they have provided us with, I guess, the seed capital, if you will, to be able to start to put in place the infrastructure. But once we have that in place, which will be shortly, then what we are moving towards is a deposit return scheme, which is a money back bottle. Now, anybody who drinks Red Stripe is familiar with the concept of a money back bottle.
Yeah.
That you return the bottle to a wholesaler or to Red Stripe, and they will pay you back for the empty bottle. It's precisely the same concept that's going to be available for drinks bottles, plastic drinks bottles. You're going to see a symbol that tells you it's a money back bottle, and then you collect your bottles and you take it to a depot, and you get paid for it. So that's where we're going.
Paid by the bottle. Okay. But currently RPJ actually pays by the pound, correct?
We buy bottles, we buy plastic bottles by the pound. We pay $10 a pound for bottles. But when the money back bottle system is introduced, then it's going to be much greater than that. Okay,
beautiful. So for all our viewers, please, you can turn in your bottles now. You know, this is something that you as a Jamaican, you want to do. You want to ensure that the plastic bottles are reaching recycling partners and they're going to be able to make something else. So do your part, guys, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good citizenship to do that.
Yeah. All right. So what can consumers do to help? And this is something that actually we never spoke of, but what is the collection rate currently? You know, of the 800 million that's out there.
800 million bottles, we are collecting now roughly about 100 million of those, which is a 12.5% collection rate.
Okay.
Now, I mean, 100 million sounds like plenty, but 12 to 13% means that the remaining, 87% is going into the waste stream.
Yeah.
Where it is going to stay for all practical purposes forever.
Yeah.
So we are quite ambitious that over the next few years, as a country, we want to raise that collection rate. We want to invert it. Instead of collecting 12% and sending 88% into the waste stream, we want to collect, 80-odd%.
Yeah.
And only have a tiny amount left over.
We need to get there. All right, guys, I want to mention this young lady, Grace. Grace says, my children are part of the conversation. They said we must recycle. And that is so beautiful. The children, oh my gosh, when they hear about recycling, everybody is going to recycle after that. Once you get a child on board, everybody's going to be recycling. So we need to make sure that not just adults, it's not just something that you need to add as another task. Put the youngster at home in charge of collecting all the plastic bottles or all the plastic containers. It's not just plastic bottles. Don't think of it as just your beverage bottles. It's all your plastics that you have that are number one and number two. So Grace, thank you so much.
And this is why, Grace, recognizing the important role that children can play in changing this culture as they get older, why we have already started the exercise in the schools. And we are focusing on the schools as the initial focal point of collecting plastic bottles. So we have programs in a lot of the schools to do this.
Okay, great. All right, so what is the government doing, Damian, in terms of helping us to reduce our plastic pollution problem?
Well, in a way, Recycling Partners is doing this in a way on behalf of the government as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have the full support of the government in doing this. The government has indicated an increased environmental awareness insofar as they have implemented the plastic ban. They have implemented the styrofoam ban, the plastic bag, the scandal bag ban,
yeah,
the styrofoam ban. And this can be seen sort of as a third stage in better environmental management. And so we have the government's full cooperation
beautiful.
and support.
Okay. All right. So we spoke about it earlier, but in terms of the DRS, do you have a deadline in terms of when that would start? Anything?
We are
And the
still,
mechanics behind it. How is it going to work?
okay.
I know we
We are
spoke
still
about
trying to. We are still putting in place the infrastructure, not just the physical infrastructure, setting up the depots and acquiring the rolling stock, so that we, once people really take this on in earnest, we actually have the channels and the capacity to collect all the plastic bottles and to get them to RPJ's head depot, and then to move them into the private recycling supply chain. But we are also putting in place the corporate infrastructure of RPJ itself. And that too requires a cooperation of the government, because government had responsibility for it before. They still have responsibility, but more direct control of it. So we're putting those things in place now. And once we are satisfied that both the corporate and the capital infrastructure is in place, then we are going to be giving notice to the manufacturers and consumers that the deposit return scheme is going to begin. So we hope to have this in place by early next year.
Okay, beautiful. I'm looking forward to that. 2021. I mean, after this 2020 year, something better be exciting for 2021, because this has been quite a year. All right, let's take a few questions. Let's see, what do we have here? Carrie Ann begs the question then, how effective is recycling? I guess she might be referring to the 12%. Carrie Ann, if you're still here.
Well, the point is we haven't started a national effort yet. What we have now is a kind of piecemeal thing where some companies are encouraging it, some private individuals. It really depends entirely upon uncoordinated effort. What RPJ is going to come along with is a campaign and a coordination and the infrastructure to incentivize the collection of plastic bottles, the separation of your waste into recyclable plastic and everything else, and to incentivize you and encourage you to bring it in and make it available for recycling.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going to be a much broader and a much noisier effort. And of course, the money back bottle is going to provide an economic incentive for some people to get into the business.
Yeah.
The informal business of collecting plastic bottles and taking them to RPJ.
Yeah. I mean, my experience with RPJ, I remember talking to the CFO, Miss Winnie Cummins, and she had mentioned there were a few persons who actually made a living from it, and they were actually able to send, their children through school just by collecting plastic bottles. And that was earlier when, I believe it was less than $10 a pound. So imagine the lady, I remember it being a young lady or a lady. And I remember her putting her kids through school, and I thought that was quite valiant of her in terms of, making the effort, because it's not easy. There are bottles everywhere, but a lot of people think about it as nasty, picking up garbage, etc.
Yeah. Well, anything that you do to provide a living for your family can be nasty or to be disrespected. But those economic opportunities will be much greater and more lucrative once we introduce the money back bottle.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to touch on, Damian, is in terms of the number 1 and number 2 bottles, why mainly those do we concentrate on in terms of collection?
Well, first of all, for quantitative reasons, the vast majority of plastic bottles that we use are number 1 and number 2. So that's why we're concentrating on those. And remember, we said we're collecting all plastic bottles,
Okay.
But we have ways of recycling number 1 and number 2. We don't have ways of recycling the others. Thankfully, it's as a proportion of the total amount of plastic bottles produced, it's relatively smaller. So we're trying to get to where the biggest part of the problem is.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for Dr. King? Let's see, Miss Carrie again. How valuable is using glass bottles as a possible alternative to the constant use of plastic drink bottles? Well, Carrie.
Well, yeah, the problem, Carrie, is that glass bottles cost a bit more, and the consumers prefer to choose the cheaper alternative. So if a manufacturer were to start using glass bottles, you're going to pay a lot more for that drink than you would in plastic bottles. And then you choose plastic bottles and the glass bottle manufacturer loses market share. So it's kind of a problem where what consumers choose is where we end up with the plastic bottles.
Yeah.
And so we try to sort of accept that and manage it as best we can.
Well, I do believe plastic is also cheaper.
Yes, that's the point I'm making.
Meaning more. And convenience. Yeah. It's not easily breakable. You can throw it across the room. You can't do that with a glass bottle. So not that anybody's going to be throwing a plastic bottle across the room, but at the same time, even when you think about children consuming, youngsters, call it toddlers, they're consuming beverages in bottles. Would you want to give them something in a glass bottle? Because even the baby bottles now, that's plastic. It might not be a PET bottle, but it's still plastic. So that's something that we need to consider. I don't believe we have. Wait, Leanne has a question. How will different grades of plastic be managed?
Well, once we collect all of the plastic bottles, then we go through a sorting process. That's the first thing that happens. So we sort it into PET and HDPE and the other kinds, and then we know where each type of plastic must go.
Okay. All right, Damien. Last question for you, and I am actually going to put up your banner. How do we get in contact with RPJ?
Okay. Well, you can reach us at Recycling Partners JA Ltd. Recycling Partners JA Ltd at gmail.com. Or you can call our office at 876-848-7381. And as part of launching the national campaign, we're going to be launching our new website shortly and promoting that. So you'll be able to access information on our website and communicate with us through the website. But we're also on Facebook, so you can look up Recycling Partners of Jamaica.
Okay, great. I think your Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter?
And Twitter.
As well? And I believe the handle is the same.
Yes. Yes. Recycling JA. At Recycling JA is the same for Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
All right, I think we are back. Apologies for that. Beautiful internet in Jamaica. Damien, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Damien. I'm going to ask you to go in the guest room, I guess, backstage.
Sure.
And we're going to invite our other guests now. All right. Sorry about that hiccup, guys. Just know. Damien will be back shortly to answer any additional questions that you may have. We are actually going to invite our second guest. Edson Carr, how are you, sir?
How are you doing, Shelly? I'm great. I'm great. Happy
I
to be here
am
tonight.
well. Oh, thank you for being with us. Really excited to have you. You know, recycling, we just spoke with Damien. Recycling is one thing, but waste management in general, you're the guy with a lot more to take on. So I am really excited to have this conversation with you right now. Edson, so you are the project and planning manager at NSWME. Tell us a little bit about what you do and at NSWME.
All right. So, as stated, I'm the projects and planning manager. I'm actually in charge of the planning department where we do all research related to the waste management sector. So, we look for new and innovative ways to push the authority beyond its current engagement towards proper waste management in the island. What we're also responsible in terms of that department is doing work as it relates to anything urban planning that is related to waste management. So what we would be doing is work that would take into consideration the the development or looking for new location for disposal sites or transfer stations. Uh,
Okay.
and as I said before, we are responsible for a lot of the research, all of the research. So the executive director normally likes to think of us as the brain of the organization because we punch out all of the research that is needed to assist us
Okay.
in our day-to-day activities.
Okay. So you're the guy that lets us know how much garbage we actually produce every year and all of that. And more,
Correct.
obviously.
It's not me
Okay.
alone. I have a
Yeah, the
department,
team.
and it is the work that is done through the department and the relevant staff members who are there that
Mm.
punch these numbers out yearly.
Okay. How much do we actually produce annually?
Okay. Since this year, from January to August, we have disposed of rough almost 700,000 tons of garbage at our disposal sites, and we have 8 disposal sites across the island.
Okay.
Last year, we had a little over 1 million tons of garbage disposed at our disposal sites. This figure is not exactly how much is generated by the entire island because
Hmm.
we collect roughly about 75%, there are about 60 to 70%, 75% of the garbage across the island.
Okay. Okay. So there's more that ends up in our gullies that can't be accounted for pretty much.
Yeah, and we are actively doing work to ensure that there's no garbage is going into our gullies. So we have several programs that are going to come on stream, some that we have already worked.
Hmm.
What we're trying to do more than anything else, however, is to try to have a change in the overall culture of how Jamaicans dispose of their garbage. So it's
Yep.
not only about us going out to do that regular collection. It
Hmm.
is also about us working to ensure that there are sound environmental practices and to push the idea of recycling and reuse because that is also a part of our mandate.
Okay. All right. So tell us about your mandate at NSWMA for the most part. You know, what role does NSWMA play in keeping Jamaica clean? You know, we talk about, picking up the garbage, but what else is it that NSWMA does?
So NSWMA is really the agency that regulates and manages solid waste in the island.
Hmm.
And we do that through the Act, which was developed in 2001. But the Act gives us the power to collect, transport, and ensure that the final disposal of the waste is at a very sound environmental standard.
Okay.
So we are also responsible not only for just our day-to-day collection and disposal at our controlled disposal sites, but we are also working to ensure that we do things as it relates to recycling. Mr.
Hmm.
King was on earlier, Damien, and he spoke about Recycling and RPJ, and we have a very strong partnership with them. So two of the projects that we currently have underway right now is a project that I'm very proud of in Raytown called the Plastic Waste Minimization Project. And we have a Northern Belt project that is with 16 communities across the island. The Northern Belt project is actually one that is very important to us because we are starting the conversation of separation at source and separation at source for plastics. Since January, we have actually collected, I believe, 30,000 pounds of plastics from the communities that we have been working in.
And what's the population in that community?
The population varies, actually 16 communities. The communities are in Hope Pastures, Barbican, Mona Heights, Lower Shortwood, Long Mountain, Norbrook, and some other communities. But we took a specific angle as it relates to this project, because over the years, we have been working on trying to find out what is the specific mechanisms we need to employ to ensure that our citizens can move towards separations at source. In regards to the communities that we just named, it is possibly around 16,000 householders that we are targeting, right? And as I said to you before, we are actually working with the middle income, higher income communities right now, because we had done work previously with other communities which were lower income and lower middle. So the lessons learned from the lower middle and the upper middle and the higher income communities, we can then put in different targeted measures on how to interact with the different cross sections of Jamaicans to ensure that we have proper separation at source and that each Jamaican buys into what we are doing. So we are just looking at the work done here to then put everything together to try to streamline separation at source across the island. So it's just a little bit more work to do, but we are prodding along.
Okay, beautiful. I mean, I've heard about some of the recycling projects in the different communities, and I believe so far, you know, you've done well as it relates to communication with the various communities. I believe my friends in more Norbrook Cherry Gardens area, you know, they get various bags and the specific bags that they need to put their plastics in. So that in itself is also, you know, ensuring that persons do that separation at source. So that's beautiful. Kudos to NSWME for that. If you could tell us, what are the different types of material that NSWME collects?
Okay, so we are responsible for the collection of all household and commercial waste. Based on our last waste characterization, we broke down our waste into different waste fractions. Your compostable yard waste, your compostable food waste, plastics, as defined as PET bottles and HDPEs, paper, styrofoam, glass, cardboard, wood and board, metal and tins, e-waste, hazardous, and everything else.
Okay.
All right. So based on our last waste characterization, the compostable yard waste is roughly about 24.7% of the waste that we generate in the island. And that is specifically within the Kingston metropolitan area, which inclusive of St. Catherine and St. Thomas. So the data that I'm giving you here is based on our MPM region, because we have 4 separate regions, right? The compostable food waste is roughly about 19%, but plastics on a whole, in terms of HDPE and PET bottles, is roughly about 6% of the waste that we collect. Roughly about 6% of the waste we collect.
Oh, wow, that's
3%
interesting.
for PET bottles and 3% for HDPE.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and I need to research that a bit more because I would think that the plastics would be a larger percentage. Um, but I mean, outside of that, in terms of large appliances, NSWME collects that as well?
We actually do. But the situation with that is that based on our trucks, we cannot collect what we call bulky waste on a regular basis. So
Okay.
what we do from time to time is that we have specific bulky waste projects that we undertake. But if a resident has bulky waste and would like to
Mhm.
have that disposed of, you can always contact us and then we can set it up.
Okay. I believe we have that information that we can share. Um, and talk to us a little bit about your app. I
Okay.
believe NSWME has an app.
Yes, we do. And it is something that we would like all persons in the island to go ahead and download. The app is actually available both in the Google Play Store and in the App Store. But what the app does is gives you information on NSWMA. And what we're moving towards is to ensure that you have your collection schedule updated in the app. Right? We're going to be updating the collection schedules daily. But one of the main things about the app is that it provides you with the opportunity to take a snapshot of if you see an illegal dump. Or say, for instance, your garbage has not been collected for X amount of days. You can take a picture of that and send it to us. We would get the information instantaneously through the app. And then our team in-house through our communications department would then follow up and send back to the relevant region, who would then act upon going out to either look at the illegal disposal sites for us to do the collections there, or for us to go out and do work in terms of doing your collection.
Okay. I'm going to take a quick question from Carrie Ann Willis here. What is the waste management strategy for rural communities that are not accessible by truck? So they can use the app and message. How is that going to work? They're not accessible by truck. So how would we get to them?
All right. So the situation is that there are a lot of communities that do not have waste collections just because of they aren't readily accessible. So what we have done in some of these communities is that there are some communities that have a one-off location that we go to do that collection. So it would not be the regular door-to-door collection for the citizens, but at a central collection point.
Okay.
But what we're also trying to do as well is that we have looked into getting some smaller trucks that will help us to navigate these areas. But one of the things that we do, especially for the rural areas, is to encourage them to compost their waste. All right. As I said to you before, based on the waste characterization that was done for Kingston, it is roughly about 24% that is yard waste and 19% that is food waste. But when you look across the board for Jamaica, it's roughly about 60% of our waste that is yard waste and food waste and can be composted. So we encourage our residents, especially the ones within the rural areas, to do composting.
Okay. Edson, so we're in the indisciplined society, right? For some of us, not everybody,
Not everybody.
so not everybody. What are some of the challenges that NSWME encounters trying to do their work on a daily basis?
All right. So one of the major issues that we are having is that, for one, we encourage persons to containerize their garbage. And what we actually really mean by that is for you to bin it, for you to put your garbage in a garbage bag before we go out and collect. All right. So the proper storage of your garbage until we are able to come and collect it is actually very important. It is a hindrance for us in the collection mechanism if we go to a particular skip and the garbage isn't properly containerized, properly binned, properly put into a garbage bag, because we have to spend additional time at those locations shoveling the garbage into the garbage trucks, right? One of the other issues that we have is the illegal disposal of garbage. There are persons who unknowingly, a resident would want their garbage to be disposed of based on construction waste and would have employed a particular agent entity to do that, or they know somebody who has a truck to do that. Some of these persons collect the money from the residents and then they would dispose of the waste at an unauthorized location. And we have issues relating to that consistently. What we have started to do is that through the app, we have had persons taking photos and sending in the information for us of persons dumping the garbage illegally. And also for us to map the locations of the illegal dump sites so we can consistently monitor and manage them. So those are two of the major problems that we have. And as you said, some of us are, not the entire country is one that is illegal in nature, but there are some of those citizens who do not follow the rules, and then based on that, we have a major issue.
Okay, wow. All right, so one of the most important things, guys, from that is containerize or put your garbage in a bag. You know, it's quite simple. Just put your garbage in a bag. You know, if you're on the road,
bag it and bin it.
Bag it and bin it. Let's do that. Hashtag bag it and bin it. I love it. All right, so before we wrap up here, I do want to touch on at least two questions before we wrap up. Our population is growing globally and locally. Riverton has been around from Wapikil Phillip. I'm sure it has grown over the years, but at the same time, what plans does NSWME have to ensure that our waste, as the population grows, as well as consumer habits change? You know, because we are so consumer centric, where every year you need a new phone, every outfit that come out you need it, you know, so we're shopping a lot more, and a lot of these products are made so that they're easily replaceable or easily disposable. So what is NSWME's plan to ensure that we can actually manage our waste, especially as our habits change and our purchasing change?
All right, so as I said to you before, roughly about 60 to 70% of the garbage that we collect is compostable, right? So based on the research in-house and the work that we do, our executive director is very much in tune in terms of pushing the message of composting. Because if residents compost, we would literally have 60% less garbage to collect. That would therefore mean that the lifespan of all of our disposal sites would be that much longer. So we consistently push the message of composting, right?
Okay.
So the tagline we use right there is compost before you dispose, right? So that in of itself will take some pressure off of our disposal sites. What we also do and what we're doing is also working towards separation at source. As we said that we have work ongoing as it relates to the separation of our plastics. But in the very short future, we're hoping to start up the separation of your cardboards and your Tetra Paks. So there's conversations that are now ongoing to see how we can start that process. So first of all, we're trying to reduce the amount of waste that we have going towards our disposal sites. And then we are looking towards different ways in which we can properly manage our disposal sites to ensure that the lifespan for it is a little bit longer.
So when are we going to actually see a landfill at Riverton?
To be honest with you, that question is a loaded one. What we actually have in terms of the waste management sectors is three types in terms of our disposal of waste. We have our open dumps, we have our controlled dumps, and we have our sanitary landfills. In terms of the word landfilling, a lot of persons think of a sanitary landfill. But what we have in Jamaica is our controlled disposal sites, which is between your open dumps and your sanitary landfill. One of the major reasons that we have not gone towards having a sanitary landfill is mainly because of the financial constraints of setting up a sanitary landfill. And it's also very difficult for us to re-engineer a controlled dump into a sanitary landfill. So if that was supposed to happen, we would have to go ahead and create a new disposal site, a new sanitary landfill. If you actually look in terms of major small island developing states, you would realize that the major mechanisms towards the final disposal of your garbage is actually your controlled dumps, controlled disposal sites, sorry. And nothing is actually wrong in terms of using a controlled disposal site, but is putting the mechanisms that are in place to ensure that these disposal sites are environmentally sound and that it doesn't provide a hazard to the residents on a whole. What that means is that we should put mechanism in place to ensure that we have less fires. We should put mechanisms in place that we control the odor. We should put mechanisms in place to ensure that any work that is being done on the disposal site does not impact our water resources. And these are all things that NSWME has been doing and has been consistently doing over the last 4 years. Since the last 5 to 4 years, we have seen a tremendous increase in our management capabilities, right? Currently, what we do at all our disposal sites is ensure that we have a stockpile of soil to ensure that we can cover on a regular basis. And also we have that stockpile to ensure that if there is any fires, we can use that with the assistance of the personnel working on the disposal site to get those fires under control in very short order.
All right, Edson, we are 5 minutes away from the hour. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to invite Dr. King back in the group so that we can take questions from the audience. Welcome back, Dr. King.
Hi there, thanks. And I'm very glad that Edson mentioned the partnership, because it's actually our most important partnership. Because you have to remember, as he pointed out, that they are the ones actually responsible for managing waste in Jamaica. It's actually critically important for our mission that we work closely with NSWME.
One question that I would love to touch on, Damien, and I would like our viewers to see the different locations that they can go to drop their plastics. We have a slide here that we can share. And viewers, we will share this at the end so you can see. So we have various drop-off locations, depots, and partners. If you want, Damien, can you explain to us the difference in terms of drop-off, depots, and partners?
Yes. When the money back bottle system comes into play, then a depot is where you can, or a partner is where you can go and monetize your bottles, where you can get paid back whatever is the deposit return on it. A drop-off is simply a place where you can dispose of the bottles that you have collected and separated, because you're just trying to be a good corporate citizen and are not really motivated to go to the trouble of monetizing it.
Okay. And then the partners you can just drop off there. All right, guys. Do we have, I believe we have a question for Edson. And I guess Damien, you can join in as well. Amoy, what's the mechanics behind the community projects? I believe this was as it relates to the recycling in the various communities that you spoke of, Edson.
So you're asking what is the mechanics behind it in terms of how do we go about doing the work? All right, so as I said to you, we had picked roughly about 16 communities that we're currently working with. And we did these projects with roughly about 8 communities previously. What we actually do is seed the community members with plastic bags, and then we go into the community, I believe, once per week to collect the plastics itself. In terms of what we're doing in Raytown, we actually seed the community members there as well with garbage bags. And the residents would then separate their plastics. We have roughly about 6 members of the community working with us as environmental wardens. So they would actually go into the communities with some small down carts to collect those plastic bottles. And then the plastics would be stored at a central location in which we go into the Raytown community and do collections twice per week. We have realized that the work that is being done by the environmental wardens has actually expanded beyond the reach of the community itself. Because one of the reasons why we chose Raytown for the plastic waste minimization project is because Raytown is a fishing village, 1, and 2, the Raytown fishing village is actually very close to a gully. So what we're trying to do within Raytown is to try to change the behavior of the community members from disposing of garbage within the gully by doing the collection by the environmental wardens. And as I said to you, it has expanded so much a little bit beyond the reach of the community that the environmental wardens have been consistently cleaning the shoreline of plastics every single week. The first time we went to drop off plastics at RPJ, we actually carried in about 1,600 pounds of plastics. And this is just from the community itself and from the environmental wardens working along the shoreline.
Okay.
That's a great job.
Yeah.
That's a great job.
We have a question here from Catherine. Will the cess on plastic bottles still exist when the monetizing of bottles begins?
No, the deposit return is going to replace the current cess. The cess is a levy of $1 per bottle that the manufacturers have agreed to pay in order to fund the setting up of the infrastructure.
Okay. We have here from Ashley. When the DRS is implemented, will the public get paid for all PET and HDPE or just those from RPJ partner companies? Good question, Ashley.
Yes, well, we are expecting to incorporate all of the manufacturers and sellers of product that comes in PET bottles. So it should apply to nearly everything that you buy. But
Okay,
only PET bottles.
Okay, because you spoke about the little label that you're going to have on the PET bottles. What then will become of the bottles before the DRS that actually don't have the label on there?
Well, we want to collect all the bottles.
Okay.
So we're going to work with an incentive to make sure that even those that don't have the label, you know, there's a way for you to monetize them as well.
Okay. Zahira is asking about glass bottles. Edson, Any take on recycling glass bottles recycled, larger and tinted
So
glass
there's
bottles?
conversations in the works for us to do the recycling of larger bottles, glass bottles and tinted glass bottles. But that conversation has just started, so we don't have the information to disseminate to the wider public just yet. One of the things that can be done is that go ahead and download our app. And we will feed information through our app in terms of the new projects that that are going to come on stream. So the conversations in regards to the larger bottles and glass bottles is something that we are doing, and RPJ through Miss Cummins and some of our team members there are also a part of that conversation.
Okay, great. Final question for the gentleman here. All right, whose responsibility is a clean environment? We've heard a lot about extended producer responsibility, and in the global space, locally we don't really, we mention it, but we don't really speak about it to that extent. So whose responsibility is a clean environment? Damian, you go first.
What we call we have a way of talking about the environment like it's up in the sky. We have a way of othering the environment. So we're doing something for the environment. Think of the environment like your bedroom. It is how you manage your own space for your own benefit. So therefore, it is everybody's responsibility, because the environment is our yard, and we want our yard to look good and to be healthy. So when you see it that way, then whose responsibility is your bedroom? It's everybody's responsibility.
Okay, beautiful. I love how you put that. Edson.
Just as Damien said, right? It's everyone's responsibility. I like to say it's 100% every single person's responsibility. Jamaica's beauty is our collective duty. So the responsibility rests on every single resident of the country and every visitor that comes in as well.
Indeed.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. This has been, if you know me, you know this is where my heart is. You know, the environment and recycling, I've been pushing this for quite some time. So I want to thank you both for being here. We're getting ready for some giveaways. What we will do, viewers, is we will respond to the questions once the chat ends. But gentlemen, thank you. I am going to jump into the giveaway. If you want a free shirt, be kind to the planet, get ready to answer the question. All right. Thank you, Darian. Thank you, Edson. All right, everybody ready for the giveaway now? Let's see. All right, first person to respond to what types of plastics does RPJ collect? What types of plastics? I only need 2 numbers. Remember, there are 7 codes. What types of plastics does RPJ collect? Second question. Ivadne, you cannot answer that question. Second question. Name one thing as a consumer NSWME would like for you to do. Name one thing NSWME would like for you to do for them to ensure that they are able to collect your garbage and do what they need to do, their responsibility. All right, so I have here Ashley. You are the winner. Name 2 types of plastics, I said, guys. So Catherine, sorry about that. Zahara, sorry about that. Ashley's our winner for that one. One more. There's one more question, guys. All right, wait. Lonnie actually got it. Bag it properly. Thank you, guys. All right, so we have our 2 winners. That will be Ashley and Lonnie. Catherine, Ashley beat you by like 2 seconds. But thank you all for being here. This was really, really interesting. I hope you guys learned a lot today. And please remember that you need to share the information that you've learned. It's not just for you to hold on to. It's for you to share with your friends, your family, your community. When you see the guy on the street flinging the bottle all over the place, just say to him. I mean, sometimes people can be a little rough, but just say, don't do that. You know, we need a clean environment, a clean Jamaica with the industry that we have, tourism industry. We depend heavily on it. We need to ensure that our beaches are clean, our waters are clean, and not to mention the fish that we eat. I'm sure everybody here love a fish once in a while. I really feel for fried fish right now. Not parrotfish. We don't eat parrotfish. All right. So again, thank you all for being here. We talk about issues and we offer solutions. Please remember, we're going to be sharing all of this information on our Facebook and Instagram pages. Be sure to follow so that you can continue to get information for us. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube page. What we do sometimes is we do videos that show you, you know, reasons why you need to do certain things. So we're going to be coming out with a recycling video, reasons why you need to recycle, and obviously who you need to call. So stay tuned to our pages, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We're also on Twitter. Thank you so much for being here, and you have a good night.